So the first section of the Sutras, okay, if you flip back and you look to the title, it was called the settled mind. And so the whole first section was about how to settle your mind, or what the settled mind looks like, rather. The second section is called treading the path. So what do you think this section might be dealing with?
Changing paths.
Changing paths. He might be trying to convince you to change your path.
Living it once you've settled it.
Living it once you've settled it. Okay.
Just moving forward on the path.
Moving forward on the path. So the first section he essentially says, okay, this is what the path kind of looks like. The second section he says, well, here's how you do it. Here's how you actually live this path that I'm explaining and describing to you. And so he tells you in the first verse of the second section, purification, refinement, surrender, period. These are the practical steps on the path of yoga. Simple enough. Purification, refinement, surrender. These are the practical steps on the path of yoga. When Azut asked you this morning what is yoga, or to define or describe yoga, somebody, I think, actually used the word purification. I think somebody might have even said refinement.
Yeah.
And surrender, maybe somebody didn't say the actual word, but the idea was implied, I think, in what we were talking about. So, yeah, we already know this, right? Yoga, purifying, refining, surrendering. Okay? So those are practical steps on the path of yoga. They nourish the state of samadhi and weaken the causes of suffering. So purification, refinement, and surrender nourish samadhi, or superconsciousness, and weaken the causes of suffering. So if you don't want to suffer, purify, refine, surrender. That's essentially what he's saying here, okay? So these things nourish the state of samadhi and weaken the causes of suffering. What does that implicitly tell you about samadhi?
Makes you strong.
It makes you not what?
Suffer.
Suffer. So it's kind of implied that samadhi might be the opposite of suffering here, right? So things that nourish samadhi eliminate suffering. Things that nourish suffering prevent you from ever attaining samadhi. They're diametrically opposed. They're almost opposites, you could say.
When you practice yoga, hatha yoga, or whatever, those things that cause suffering begin to fall away. I have noticed. The people in your life, perhaps, or situations, careers, things just start to change.
So through the process of purification, refinement, and surrender, yoga, suddenly those things that cause suffering begin to fall away. Are you saying automatically, basically? Without you having to even think about it?
Pretty much
it just happens, right?
Automated. You hardly have to think about it.
So you could say yoga is a science, right? It's not something that, it's not some crazy far out theory. It's a science. When you do it, you start to eliminate the causes of suffering, just like that, right? It just happens. They just begin to fall off.
Yeah, they do.
You're not having to think about it, or you're not trying to force, your suffering out of your system. It's just through the process of yoga, asana, pranayama, meditation, mantra, all the chanting, all these things, suddenly those root causes of suffering begin to melt away. Okay, because samadhi essentially burns off your karma. Okay, it's like the giant incinerator of karma. It's there to help you essentially burn off your karma, which is the causes of suffering. Okay, you suffer because you have karma. You attain samadhi. Okay, you burn off your karma. You end suffering. Because again, remember what we said about karma. What were karmic seeds called?
Samskaras.
Samskaras. where are samskaras planted? Where can they take root? In what type of field?
Fertile.
In the ego field, right?
Yeah.
Do samskaras, does karma have anywhere to cling in samadhi and pure consciousness? No, there's nothing for it to root down to, nothing for it to cling onto, grab onto, hold onto. So the more you attain the samadhi state, the less your karma has any type of effect on you in your life. The more you can begin to burn off this karma and purify, refine, and surrender. In verse 3, he tells you what the 5 causes of suffering are. Pretty cool. So I'm going to write those up here. And you can jot them down in your notebook if you want, because we're going to take a few notes about each one. So the 5 causes of suffering, according to Patanjali, are, number 1, ignorance of our real nature. We'll say true self. So that's the first cause of suffering. You can just go ahead and jot these down and we'll talk about them in a sec. Okay. You can finish writing those down. If you look on to verse 4, it's going to explain all these to you now. Okay, these are the 5 causes of suffering, and he's going to tell you a little bit about each one. Ignorance of our real nature is the source of the other 4. Whether they be dormant, weak, suspended, or fully active. Okay? So ignorance of the true self, or of your real nature, is the source of the other 4 causes of suffering. Okay, so this is the source. This is the source of suffering here. Okay? It causes these other 4 to occur. Okay? Now, it's the source of these other 4, egoism, attachments, aversions, and fear of death, whether they be dormant, weak, suspended, or fully active. Okay? This is karma. Believing something you're not, being attached to impermanent things, being averse to impermanent things, and fearing the death of your mind-body personality composite. That's karma. All of these can be dormant, okay, weak, suspended, or fully active. Okay, that's your karma. This is what causes your karma. Ignorance of your true self, not being enlightened. If you're not enlightened, you have karma. If you're enlightened, you don't. Pretty simple, okay? Or you've managed to neutralize all your karma. Like guess that's a better way of putting it. So the source of suffering, the source of our karma, is not knowing our true nature. Okay? That causes karma, which can be broken down into 4 categories basically. Egoism, believing you are this mind body. Being attached to anything impermanent. Being opposed or averse to anything impermanent. And fearing your own death. That's karma. Now, all of these can be dormant. That's where we want to get all of this here, dormant, meaning not creating problems in your life, not active, not having any effects in your life. This is where we want to get our karma, dormant. Make sense? Right? Not active. Weak is karma that has been mostly neutralized, but is still creating a few little issues in your life. Okay? But it's not such a big deal. Weak is good. If you can get all your karma here, that's pretty good too. Okay? Suspended, what do you think that means? What is suspended karma? Any ideas?
Temporarily gone, but could come back at any
Exactly.
time.
Sleeping.
I think that's what we talked about with the Corys. Do those guys have the suspended karma?
No, this is different.
It seems like there's people that
different.
have a lot of energy and vitality, and they're able to do a lot of things, and they don't hurt anyone, and they follow the great law. But you said to me, "Oh, they still have karma."
Mm-hmm.
Is it dormant? Is it weak? Is it suspended? Is it fully active?
Well, what I mean when I say that is, there's really nothing worse than a comfortable Earth existence.
I'm realizing that now because it's hard to learn.
Yeah. So if you're comfortable, you have all your resources, finances, everything's taken care of. Maybe you're born into a typical sort of Judeo-Christian Western family. You grow up, you go to college, you have the kids, everything's pretty comfortable, you're pretty happy, you know. I feel really sorry for you, if that's the case. Suffering.
Why? Because they're not able to.
Because they're not going to wake up like that.
It's like
They're not going to wake up like that. If you're comfortable, why would you move around? Why would you shift around? If you're comfortable where you are, why would you grow? Why would you want to learn anything? So actually, suffering is fantastic. Suffering is the greatest gift in your life. There's nothing better than suffering. You should thank God every waking moment of every day that you suffer. Suffering is fantastic. Because if you don't suffer, then how do you know what happiness looks like? If you don't suffer, how do you know what joy looks like? If you don't suffer, how do you know what peace looks like? You have no basis for comparison. So people that don't suffer a whole lot and just have kind of a comfortable earth life and just kind of go through the motions and I feel really sorry for them. Because they're not going to wake up like that. They're not going to wake. They will eventually. Everyone wakes up eventually. This is the theory anyway. We're all evolving toward the point of the evolution of consciousness where essentially all of humanity, all sentient beings in the universe at some point will wake up. It's this idea of a singularity, but that's really neither here nor there.
One thing about suffering also, once you understand that you cannot have joy without suffering, because you have to, in order to know joy, happiness, love, peace, you have to know suffering. Does it make sense? Once you understand that, the suffering is not suffering. Problems are not problems.
Nice.
They're lessons.
They're they're not actually something you are suffering from.
Because you don't want the duality.
You understand the whole picture now. You understand that there is. Does it make sense? There is a duality. There is that to know the joy, I have to go through the suffering. So the suffering is not a suffering. The suffering, the concept of
potential joy.
It's right. We look at it as a potential joy. Correct. That's the word. It's something that you go through. The problem is not a problem. Does it make sense?
That's good.
Yeah.
So really there is no suffering, but there's suffering because to know joy. But once you understand the whole picture, there is no suffering.
Well, I
It's
understand.
suffering is like the bridge that you have to cross to go from ignorance to enlightenment. You have to walk across that bridge, otherwise you won't know what enlightenment looks like if you don't know what its opposite looks like.
You won't know you're enlightened.
Yeah.
Why do you hear about good karma and bad karma? Is that just a label and illusion?
There is good karma. Every time you do something selflessly, you do a selfless act or a kind act for others, essentially you accumulate good guy points out there in the universe somewhere.
That's dharma, no? No.
Dharma just means righteous living. That's the definition of dharma, righteous living or sattvic living.
You're talking more about seva.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or right, service. But good karma just means like, I did something good for somebody, and then wow, next week somebody just did something really nice for me, and it always works out like that. Just notice it in your life. Karma is, there's a theory that karma is actually speeding up. It's getting really fast. And what that means is, for all of us living in this age that we live in, is that, if you do something bad to someone, you can almost bet your bottom dollar it's going to come back to you in this life. It may come back to you in the next 5 minutes. I have that happen a lot.
So fast.
Super fast. Instant karma.
Right.
And that's why,
John Lennon talked.
it's not like, thousands of years ago somebody would do something bad. It might be 20 incarnations before they actually feel the effect. But because time is speeding up, meaning more things are happening in less amounts of time, the idea is that karma is also speeding up. And so we're actually able, in our age, to take care of a lot of stuff in this one incarnation that we wouldn't have been able to thousands of years ago with the particular energies that were hitting the planet at that time. Again, this is a theory.
So do you want
But-
fully active good karma, or do you want all karma?
Yes, you want fully active good karma and dormant bad karma.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah, so again, suspended means, and I had this happen to me this week. I started back to college this week, and I'm taking some classes, and I'm taking like science classes, chemistry classes, biology, and it's pretty hard. And after I read like the first chapter of my book, and I started doing the homework and went to class, I freaked out this week. I freaked out. Just thinking like, oh, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I don't have a high enough IQ to grasp these concepts, I just can't do it. I just can't do it, I'm not motivated enough, I'm too lazy, there's just no way I can... All this stuff came up.
Yeah.
It was crazy this week. Just from...
Me too.
just from going to a class, reading a book, and whatever. I have this terrible emotional reactions to this stuff. And it's because I thought I was over all that. Like, I went through that in college, right? I'm over all that. I'm 32 years old now. I'm in. No, it was suspended. It was in suspended animation. It was just chilling out, waiting for a time to rear its ugly head again. And that's just what it did. So be wary of the suspended stuff. Don't think you're over something. Don't ever think you're over something. That's the worst thing you can do, is think you're over something. Because 9 times out of 10, something's going to happen in your life to demonstrate to you ain't over it.
Reggie says, feelings buried alive never die.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. That's great.
This is good.
That's perfect. That's like a perfect description of suspended karma.
Is that good?
And then there's the fully active karma. These are your shadows. This is the junk in your life that causes you to suffer. We all have shadows, we all have fully active karma, things that we'd rather not even talk about or discuss with people. That are dark side. Those things that you just don't talk about in polite company. We all have them. It's okay. It's alright. But that's your fully active karma. Those are the major issues, your major attachments, your major fears, your major aversions. Okay, major. is fully active. Okay? So does everybody understand the 4 different types of karma? And we want to get our bad karma here, our good karma here. Okay? Good. So we know, we've already talked about egoism, attachments, pretty obvious. Aversions, things you, attachments, things you like. Aversions, things you don't like. And 5, fear of death. So let's go down to verse 9. Since we already know about the others, let's go to verse 9. We haven't talked about this yet. And the fear of death is a spontaneous feeling, deeply rooted in us all, no matter how learned we may be. Fear of death says it's deeply rooted in us all. In other words, we all fear death. We all fear death. Why?
Because we're ignorant of our true self.
This one causes the other 4.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of this. Thinking that you are this body and this mind, and wanting it to go on, but it doesn't. It doesn't. So that's something you have to accept. Now, he says, no matter how learned we may be. So there, in other words, I think he's talking here about masters. There are even, I think he's saying, I might be wrong, but I think he's saying there are even some masters out there that really, when it comes right down to it, still haven't quite conquered that. This is the biggie. It's probably why it's last on the list. I mean, this is a biggie. You conquered this, game over. Good for you, you're done. Good. Hang out in your cave. You're done. Okay? And again, the easiest way to get over all of these is to meditate daily, burn off that karma in your super conscious state. Okay, root out all this karmic seed, get them gone, get rid of them, throw them out. Because as soon as you realize what you are, well, you know what you are, so you no longer think you're your body or mind. You're not attached to anything impermanent because you realize it's fleeting. It's here 1 minute, gone the next. Why would I be attached to something like that? You no longer dislike anything because you don't have emotional reactions to situations. And you don't fear death because you know you're infinite. Okay? Simple enough. Any questions?
Too simple.
Pretty simple.
Too simple.
5 causes of suffering. Hard to refute.
What's an example of an aversion?
I don't like it when people criticize me. I don't like it when people tell me what to do. I don't like to travel. I don't like a particular type of music. It has a negative emotional reaction. So anything that you don't like, that when it's around, you don't feel good.
But the point is the reaction you have about it.
It's the reaction. An attachment is just a reaction to something, an emotional reaction to something. An aversion is an emotional reaction to something. The idea is to be in a non-reactive state, which is samadhi.
To not care.
Well, we have to be careful with the word care. When you're when you're fully enlightened, you are care. You are love. You are compassion, right? So it's not that you don't care. Again, it's not a coldness. It's not a detached coldness. I used to think it was. It's actually it's embracing detachment. So much so that any idea of coldness or, well, once you're in that state, in other words, it's impossible to experience, the state of, I don't care.
It's like if somebody says something mean to you, you feel compassion for them that they would
Yes.
that they would even do that.
Yes, yes, thank you. So the difference is somebody says something mean to you, and if you're just cold and you don't care, I don't care what
Like,
they say
screw
about
them.
me. Screw them, I'm cooler than they are.
Right.
What do they know? That's an ego reaction.
Right.
If somebody says something to you mean, and you say, God, that poor guy, man, I feel so sorry for him.
Right.
I just want to give him a hug. You're in a much higher state, right? So that's totally different than that coldness of just not caring, right? It's completely different.
Non-judgmental, it's all compassion.
Right.
Compassion.
No caring, it become kind of a mechanism of resistance. No, it's not really pure
That's right.
consciousness.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm more meant care like not basing your self, work on others. But that's a good
Not judging
example.
yourself.
It's a good example.
Not caring what others think about you.
Right, not in the cold.
That's good.
Right.
Is that what you meant? Like you just
Yeah, I guess.
don't care what others think about you? That's
right,
good.
right, in a loving way.
Because what they think about you is really none of your business. It
Exactly.
has nothing to do with you.
Right. That's wasted energy.
Wasted energy. Yeah. Sucks your prana dry. Cool. Questions? No?
What's an example of an attachment? What's a common attachment?
Food.
Love,
Alcohol, chocolate,
your
food.
girlfriend, your
Yeah.
wife.
Relationship.
Right.
How
Relationship.
many old couples
A car.
don't go because the other one is there and when I hold them? No? I mean, when they're
Dependencies,
leaving, hey,
clinginess.
he's sick and let him
Addiction.
go. No, I want him here with me.
Oh, now
Material thing.
I did want to talk about. So, is it not okay to prefer vanilla over chocolate, or chocolate over vanilla? Or
That's okay.
that's okay, right? That's not gonna because you prefer cinnamon over nutmeg.
Right.
Isn't going to create a whole lot of karma in your life. Don't worry about little preferences, little.
No, it's
I prefer whatever down dog to dolphin or something like that. You're
That's
not
okay.
you're not gonna burn in hell and spin through the wheels of Samsara for eternity because you prefer cinnamon or down dog. Okay, so little likes and dislikes are cool. It's the strong attachments, like I can't live without that thing, or the strong aversions, like God, I hate that person. It's the
Right.
things that just make you feel
It's
That'll
dense,
cause-
dense.
that'll cause